I'm really grappling, and I've been aware for a long time with what's coming down the pike, and
it's not real cheerful. So
no,
I mean, even if you're tremendously supported on a spiritual level, I don't see a great benefit in all this massive physical level suffering. I would personally rather not have it happen. So if we get any brilliant insights on things we can do to turn it in a better direction, I think that would be worthwhile.
I'll be honest. So where I worked, I tried because, of course, my family was killed in the Holocaust, a lot of them.
Yeah.
And so I tried when I was where I was to find holes that could be exploited. And I spent decades trying to look for holes.
In the whole plan, you mean, right?
In the whole plan. And it was so layered, so deep, and comprehensively that I couldn't, and I'm pretty good at figuring that kind of stuff out. Right. I couldn't see anything that could be exploited. And
this is why they're so confident that they've already got it done, basically.
But there's some things that they can't take from us, that even no matter the amount of suffering that we must go through, if we keep being loving and caring and sensitive and being good, no matter what they throw at us, they will have been defeated in the end.
It's really interesting you mentioned that, and maybe I can share a little bit of this part too with the group, if you don't mind, because it's really important. What we're doing in this particular group, beyond the nature stuff and gardening and all, good health things and all that, is we're working with consciousness tools that strengthen our ability to do exactly what you just said. And there are some very powerful ones. And you don't have to open your mouth. You don't have to be visibly doing anything. It's internal work with, there's a thought and emotional, ticker tape that's running in the back of our head all the time, 24 hours a day. If you become aware of that and start to redirect it in a positive way and start, like you said, love towards everybody, not just the people you think are good, but the other ones need it even more. And if you learn how to make that your constant subconscious voice, everything changes. Even your physical body gets better. Right. And that's what this group is actually about. It's on a private level. This group is members only, but anybody can get in who wants to. And that's the work we're mainly doing. It's a physical level, natural healing type stuff, primarily on yourself, because then you're able to do better for other people too. But on a deeper level, it's all about what you just said. And that no matter what happens, this is a source of not only strength for yourself, but you can actually affect other people positively without them even knowing you're doing anything. And it's pretty exciting.
Well, in the Bible, it talks about if you have the faith of a mustard seed, you can move mountains.
Exactly.
And it is absolutely true.
Yes. And compared to moving mountains, moving mountains is one thing, but healing somebody who's devoted to evil and getting them to say, wait a minute, maybe there's something else I could be doing, without you're even verbally saying anything to them, just because of the resonance and power of consciousness. Yeah. We've seen it happen. Yeah. We had a member of our group who's now since not physically alive anymore, but she had a guy living next door who she had an organic garden, and he was really a devoted Roundup disciple and was spraying clouds of this stuff all over the place that got into her garden. And he was really intimidating, and she couldn't talk to him. And she started doing this internal change of exercise, of blessing him and just showering him with love. And saying, gratitude and forgiveness and all this stuff that you can do. He got rid of the Roundup and bought a weed eater and never sprayed again. And she can never even talk to him.
Uh-huh.
So it's physically, possible to make that connection.
So you're familiar with Dr. Emoto's work, right?
Yeah, very much.
So, it's true, because most life has water, and our intent is more powerful than we even know.
Oh, it's incredible. And so what I'm interested in is, let's bring it to the point, since there are some things we need to make better in the world right now, to put it mildly. Let's get it to the point where we can start testing it and seeing the feedback and watching for the changes, and not having this assumption that we can only do it inside ourselves. We can't see the reflection on the outside world, because I think we can, unless we believe that we can't, which we mostly do.
Well, that comes from a victim mentality.
Yeah.
And you can't come into this with a victim mentality. You have to want wellness and wholeness and healing, not only for yourself, but for others, and not say, oh, I'm a victim of this, or I'm a victim of...
Or we really like the good people, but we hate the bad people. That doesn't have good results, because the bad people are us in another form, and they're struggling with programming that's worse than ours. And if we were in there, we'd be, just like they are, and they need somebody's help. So, we can have this massive effect on everybody, but our beliefs are not what we think they are. We might have these beliefs we can rattle off, and I've got this philosophy and religion and beliefs, and this is what I believe, and this is what's true, and nothing else is. But underneath, if we're full of fear, our real belief is that bad things are going to take over everything, even if we don't intellectually believe it. So if you change your emotional beliefs, the whole thing gets power. Anyway, I just wanted to mention it because I think it's exciting. We still have a chance.
I learned that lesson. So I don't have an immune system.
Immune system?
I was born without an immune system. So when it was diagnosed in 96 that it was genetic, that I didn't have the genes for an immune system. So then they wanted to mix my genes. Duke University wanted to mix my genes with pig genes.
Well, what could possibly go wrong with that, right?
Yeah, what could possibly? It's not every single person. I told them no, and every single person in that study died. Every single person.
I'm not surprised, and that was probably better than what could have happened.
So then I did have this, you have to soul search when you and then all of a sudden I'm here, I'm alive. The only 30 people on the planet have lived past 2 years old. And so you go, oh, so I'm here and I've lived all these years. So, okay.
Something is protecting you. It might not be an official immune system, but if there was nothing, your body wouldn't work.
Well, when doctors see me, they're terrified. They are terrified because they go,
why?
Oh, we don't know how you work.
Why would that be scary? Why wouldn't they be happy about it?
Because they're allopathic medicine, and then I got in with then I was actually working for a complementary alternative integrative doctor. So then it was, I understood the whole thing, but so I had this huge shift that, okay, I'm just gonna, in my mind, I'm normal. I'm here. I'm going to make the most of it, and I'm happy. Yeah. And you know what?
And it worked.
Every day is a better day. Every single day.
Wow.
And so I've got a big personal testimony on that. Yeah.
Incredible. And don't believe in the limits, right?
No. I have no limits. You can see that with my gardening,
I completely agree. I think that's closer to our real nature is being limitless.
Yep.
So that's exciting. I mean, that is probably more basic than everything we've talked about, and it's where all the rest comes from.
Yes.
You know, are you going to allow it or believe that it's impossible?
Yeah.
So that's neat. That's probably gives everything else we're doing some value.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't assume that the outcome is not going to be good. I think that one way or another, it's going to end up that way.
I know it is. I mean, there is no doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
I do believe we're gonna have some really rough times, but at the end, it's going to be good. At the end, we will come out on the other side.
Yeah. So in the meantime, when we're going through the middle part, then we just, work on ourselves and radiate as much of the type of energy that we'd want to come to us as we can. And I think it will be. That's the reason you can put out that energy to the other person as if they were yourself, because really they are in another form. It's all intimately tied together. So anyway, I hope I didn't take too much of your time. It was just unusual to get to look at stuff like that.
It's a blessing. I love it. I love to talk about this,
Yeah. Reality for a change, right?
Well, that's in these series that I'm doing it. Of course, I'm coming from a biblical perspective, but so each segment that I'm going into, I do a personal application. I mean, we can look at these big disasters, catastrophe, this thing and that thing, but okay, so what can I do in my life? How does this impact me? How does it impact my inner being, my well-being, how I interact with other people? What does this mean to me being a person? And so I try and break that for each section that I do that and just take a minute, because what good does it do to talk about this or that if not talking, like you say, about bettering ourselves and internal development? I mean,
I think it's practical, right?
You have to, because that's if we're going to effectuate change, if we're going in ourselves and the world, we have to, it starts with us and work out. So,
yeah, exactly. In fact, in a way, everything is internal.
Yes.
There are reflections on the outside, but it's like, even if you go into a gym and do exercise, what's really happening is what's your attitude and what are you feeling while you're doing it, and that determines results, I think.
So I just did an article that came in from my former employer. So I said, I don't have the time, but I have to write an article. So I wrote it this week on hoarding. So there's no federal definition for hoarding, and what they believe is anything. So if you have more than what the government feels you should have, it's considered hoarding. In some communities, having 2 chickens or 2 dogs or a cat is considering hoarding. And people are going to prison for that. But so there was this big thing that they're alerting the fire departments to this hoarding problem. So now you've heard of defensible space, that they won't fight a wildfire unless it's like 200 feet around your house is clear. And if you have any clutter, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's going to be the same thing with hoarding now. They said, okay, if you are a hoarder, you're mentally ill. Because of that, we're going to get the public health and mental health. We're going to make sure we're going to use this opportunity to give you smoke alarms and teach you how to be socially not a hoarder.
Right, a normal person again.
Oh, it was like...
I think it's going to get trickier and trickier to avoid being put in that kind of therapy in the future, because almost everything a truly normal person does will be considered mentally ill.
Yeah, it already is.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is. Any behavior you have right now is mentally ill. Anything.
Yeah. So I'm beyond hopeless at this point. And it's like, this is a really strange science fiction mental hospital that we're living in.
Yeah.
Seems to me.
Yeah.
But there was a guy in Hawaii named Dr. Len. I don't know if you heard of him or not. But he started a system called Ho'oponopono, which I don't even know what it means. But there was a psychiatric hospital in some city in Hawaii, and the patients were getting so bad that the drugs weren't even keeping them under control, and they were beating up the staff and getting really violent. And they called this guy because he had progressed to a certain point in exactly what we're talking about. He had been working internally with consciousness to the point that it would actually affect outside people. So in desperation, they called him because they didn't all want to get, stabbed and stuff by the employees, and not the employees, the patients. And he went over there, set up an office outside the mental hospital, and asked for the files of each patient, and he would look at one file at a time and make some kind of a feeling contact with who it was describing. And he just said 4 things to them mentally or verbally, but the difference was his focus and the fact that he meant it. And he said, "I'm sorry, I love you, please forgive me, and thank you." And the patients started getting better. Most of them went home as normal, and then he left. And that was true. And so I've been exploring what you can do with that. It's not that the words are that critical, it's the intent behind them. And they're really significant. And, in the what do you call it? Quantum physics point of view, or a little bit beyond it, it started with the idea that the experimenter affects the experiment or the outcome of it, which is really true. And for a while with Newtonian physics, they couldn't figure out why, because it shouldn't be the case. And who cares what you believe? Everything about the experiment's physical, right? So that's the end of it. That's not the end of it. The physical turns out to be the literal reflection of non-physical consciousness levels. And that's why you draw things to yourself that go with what you're carrying subconsciously, because you're actually projecting them. And the extreme of this understanding is that every person has their own universe of experience, and that is made up of circumstances and even the characters around you, which are other people. And that what you're silently projecting, it's not just the voodoo people who are blessing and cursing people, it's all of us constantly. But it's mostly subconscious. You're either really putting out benevolent feeling toward a person or the opposite or something in between. And it's generally just goes on its own, but we can make that conscious. And when you do, it affects the other person by resonance, and their behavior changes. And they don't even have to know anything's happening. You're not intruding. You're giving them an environment, a non-physical environment of love and support. It's a kind of prayer, really, but it's not a reading of a page over and over again. It's really doing it. And so when you put out, "I'm sorry," you don't have to say anything, but that feeling, it's like totally counterintuitive. You're taking responsibility as if that's my fault, what is hurting you right now, and I apologize. Even though that is obviously not true on a physical level, on a deep level where you're projecting something that is affecting the other person, it's true. And so that affects them even if they're attacking you. And I've tried it. And then "I love you" is not like I'm enamored of what you're doing and I think it's great that you're doing all these bad things. It's not like that. It's more like the sun gives love to the plants without conditions. It's just a gift. It's a verb, not a noun. And I love you is like, especially the people who are hurting you are really bad, they need it the most. And if you have the other definition of love, you can't do it because it's dishonest. You're not thinking they're great, you know. But on a gift level, can be honest. And he did that with each patient. And then said, please forgive me. And I added, and heal from whatever, even a situation, heal the situation. And then at the end, thank you, that gratitude frequency that Emoto was working with, that affects not only water, but everything. And the whole situation changed. And that's what this lady did with the Roundup, just as a little mundane experiment. It's amazing. And I don't see why, if that can work on a little tiny scale, why does it have to work on a little tiny scale? Why couldn't we do it if we believed we could? The Earth is microscopic compared to the universe, and that's just one universe. So why do we think the Earth is gigantic? If we started seeing it as tiny and our power is unlimited because of where we come from and what flows through us, with just no tension and gratitude, why couldn't we share that on a scale that would heal the planet? I want to find out, because if we fail, fine, but I'd rather try than not.
Have you read the book Healing Words?
What's it called?
Healing Words.
No, I haven't heard of it.
So it was, I don't know if he was atheist or agnostic doctor.
Okay.
And he didn't believe in God. I don't even think he believed in a higher power or anything. He just was a doctor.
Yeah.
And I can't remember how, I mean, it's been a long time. It's been, 25 or 30 years since I read the book, but I don't remember how he first started, but he ended up getting involved with prayer for patients. And there were double-blind studies, and some patients were prayed for and other patients weren't. At the end, he became a believer because he saw the power of, and these patients didn't know if somebody was praying for them or not praying for them, and he could see the visible difference to the degree that at the end, he became a believer in, I don't remember if it was God or a higher power, I can't remember.
Well, it's just like the Emoto experiment, but on humans, right?
Yeah, it was amazing. Absolutely, because they did heal. And he just saw this incredible difference in all these patients, and it was exciting.
It is exciting, and it makes you think, all right, let's recalibrate. We think we've learned some things. Why don't we assume where we are now is zero? What's the next step? How can we take it in much deeper? You know, not to make a show, not to do anything visible, but to open up, you know, self-awareness, which leads to awareness of where you came from, and be a more open conduit for whatever's willing to flow through us to do more. I mean, I'm trying to think of a good aspect of being in the middle of an insane asylum, which is exactly where we are. Yeah. Much worse than Dr. Len. And the good thing to me is, in part anyway, it's an opportunity to actually see what we can do.
And that's what I've noticed too, is that in this, I mean, I've had some terrible experiences, and it has just given me the opportunity to refine my character and work on myself and get a better attitude and perspective on different things and reach out beyond what I think I'm capable of.
Yeah.
And stretching me. And I've turned into you say about the thankful. I'm grateful and thankful that these things have happened, because they've forged in me a person that, you know, who knows, if I didn't have these situations, would I be the person that I am now? Probably not.
If things were really easy, we probably wouldn't have made as much progress as now.
Yeah.
Internally. So I want to, I'm trying to look at what are our real beliefs, and I don't want to tell myself what I think I believe. I want to look deeper and see what I'm carrying that contradicts what I think I believe. In other words, emotional blocks. Fear is the basis of all of them, basically. And things like that, and go to them and drop them. Let more flow through. Because, I don't want to wait for somebody else to do all these things. If we can't do them, fine. But I don't want to stop short of what we could do. Because we're only here for a few minutes anyway. And it's an interesting experiment. You talked about saving herbs as tinctures, right? In bottles. What about drying? Have you done any of that?
Absolutely.
So what does that apply to, and how do you do it?
Okay, so once again, you want to get every herb has its season. So the volatile oils are most potent at the beginning of a season, some in the middle of a season, some like uva ursi are at the end of the season, like August, September. So you want to pick the time when the volatile oils are the strongest. And how do you find that out? Is through different herb books. We'll be discussing that in detail. And if anybody's interested, I can give some good references of some of the ones that I use.
All right.
And then you then pick your herbs. Usually it's from 9 o'clock in the morning on, so that they're not, don't have the dew on it. It's especially critical with the herbs because you're going to dry them. You don't want them to mold.
Right.
And you want to have the time, set aside a time that you're going to be able to follow through, because you don't want to get interrupted. You want to preserve those volatile oils as quickly as possible. Okay. And so you don't want to be like having a long telephone conversation, or, emergencies come up, that's life. But you want to dedicate this time, and this time is you want the best product possible. And for some herbs, you're going to have to destem them, pick flowers, you might have to, there's different things for different herbs that you do, because you want different parts and you don't want different, certain parts. Yeah. And then you put it in the dehydrator. And you want it at between 80 and 105 degrees with most things. There are some things like your peppers and stuff can go higher, but your herbs pretty much 80 to 105. You don't want to go over that, because you don't want to, in essence, burn them. And
you start killing all the enzymes and everything too, right?
Right. So what you want to do is make it warm enough that it dehydrates it, and it locks in both the color and the volatile oils. Yeah. And then another thing, you want to make sure it's thoroughly dried, and then put it right away into whatever storage container you're going to use. And I recommend glass for many reasons. But the reason you don't want to just turn off your dehydrator and say, I'll get to it tomorrow, is because there's humidity in the air. And
they
all
could
that
start
work
undrying,
and they can start molding. And there's nothing more disheartening than going, I had done this crystallized ginger, and I dried that for like a month. Yeah. And I went to go use some crystallized ginger, and the whole thing had molded. I was sick. I was absolutely sick.
And it's possible that it can mold without being visibly molded too, right? So in which case it wouldn't be very safe to eat, I would think.
Yeah, it chances are you're going to see it if it's been there for a while. But if it just had started molding, it's like bread. Sometimes it may have a tiny spot on the mold on it. But if you let it sit for 3 more days, then, it's full-blown problem.
And they're basically any kind of vegetable or fruit you can dry, I would imagine. Mm-hmm. Is that true?
Yep.
Because you're talking about peppers, and peppers are fruit.
Yep, I do my peppers. I do slices of lemon and lime. I do leafy greens to make my own chips instead of having other chips. I have leafy green charred chips or whatever, kale chips. Right.
All right. So for preservation, a dehydrator is really a simple, good thing to have around.
Yes. And beware of new puppies, because I came out one morning for my coffee, and my 6-month-old golden retriever had taken my 2 dehydrating books, which fortunately I know how to dehydrate because I've been dehydrating since I was 5. Yeah. And she had shredded them.
Wow.
So I no longer had them. She thinks shredding things is like the world's best pleasure. So
yeah, this is like the old excuse for school. My dog shredded my book.
Yeah,
but it really does happen.
It does, and I was like, good thing I know how to dehydrate. That's what I thought.
Yeah. But, so this would work for fresh fruit, like from the summer too, like peaches and apples and figs and all kinds of stuff like that. Those are all subject to drying in your dehydrator the same way, right?
Absolutely. They will take a little bit hotter temperature. Your herbs are low, and then your meats are super high, like if you were to do beef jerky, but then your vegetables are in the middle. So you can go 150-ish, 130 to 150-ish for some fruits. And don't forget raspberries. You can do your berries, blueberries, raspberries. I sent some gifts of some dehydrated raspberries from my garden to some folks, and they were really excited about that.
Oh, yeah. They'd never find those in the store.
Never. No.
Pretty neat. Okay, well, you're getting ready for a really busy time of year now, right? As the spring gets going, and you've got all kinds of planting to do and things like that. So I assume that your days are going to get a lot busier at this point.
It's, for about a few weeks, it's pretty busy.
Yeah.
Because I got potting, and then once I can get the soil warms up and I can plant stuff out, and then it's pretty much just weed, water, and wait.
Right.
So until harvest season, and then about August it gets nuts again when everything's coming in and there's things to put up. So
a lot of harvesting to do. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I'll encourage everybody to stay up with your website and watch what you're putting out. And if they have questions or want to communicate, then the email address is there and can stay in touch with you if they'd like to.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you, Celeste. That was fun. And we'll see how the summer goes and maybe catch up with you at the end of it.
Okay.
All right.
Anytime.